From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon. My name is Georgette Dorn. I'm the Chief of the Hispanic Division. It is a great pleasure to welcome Luis Alberto Ambroggio to the Library of Congress. But first of all, I would like to make sure that you close your cell phones so we don't be not disturbed. And then I want to thank Talia Guzman Gonzalez for having organized this event and Catalina Gomez for having produced this beautiful flyer. Luis Alberto Ambroggio is a poet, an essayist, a member of the North American Academy of the Spanish Language, and a great friend of the Library of Congress. And discussants will be Dr. Enrique Pumar, who is a sociologist, a professor at Catholic University of America, and a contributor to the Handbook of Latin American Studies, and Carmen Benito Vessels, who's a professor of literature at the University of Maryland. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Enrique Pumar, and I am the chair of the Sociology Department at Catholic University, and also a contributing editor to the handbook. It is always a pleasure to be invited to the Library of Congress, and especially to be invited by Georgette and her team in the Hispanic Division. It's truly an honor to be here, and especially on this occasion when we have an opportunity to discuss such an important book. So my role here today is to offer some introductory remarks. I am the warm-up act for the main, for the main attraction, and that should take very briefly. I wrote some remarks just to sound more organized than what I usually are. So I hope you don't mind if I read them. The recent publication of Estados Unidos Hispanos by Luis Alberto Ambroggio constitute a significant development in the sociology of knowledge of Hispanic studies. According to Karl Mannheim, historical conditions give meaning to particular manifestations of knowledge production. In his words, every epoch has its fundamental new approach and its characteristic point of view, and consequently sees the same object in new perspectives. Following this parsimonial observation, one can conclude that the growing number of self-identified Hispanic residents in the United States and the density of migration flow in the last decades are the ecological condition primarily responsible for the abundant and often contentious literature revealing the forces behind the growth, the impact, incorporation, the dispersion, and composition of the Hispanic community. Today, about 54 million Hispanics, or 17% of the population, call the United States home. If demographers are correct or trusted at all, this figure is expected to rise to about 31% in 2060. It is no wonder that even a scanned literature review of the term Hispanic studies would yield thousands of entries. Despite the volume and depth of the field, Alberto Ambroggio's contributions in his latest books are noteworthy in many respects. First, after conducting an exhaustive historical research, Ambroggio concluded that Hispanics and the Hispanic culture have marked a constant presence in American society and were major protagonists in the formation and development of this nation. Reaching this conclusion is not a small accomplishment when one considers the neglect and careless narrative that so much characterize the prose of well-known mainstream American historians. On this point, however, Ambroggio's book is in good company. Many other scholars, for example, Ray Suarez, have also documented the indispensability of this marginalized history. Second, unlike many of his contemporaries, however, Ambroggio investigates the presence of Hispanic culture one step further when he documents how meaningful our world was regarded by such key American figures as Jefferson and even Walt Whitman. Already in 1790, the statesman from Virginia was reading El Quixote and few indispensable exposition of the Hispanic historiography. Third, we learn also that the exile condition, far from being restraining, is a source of inspiration and unleashes the copious cultural production of many intellectuals in exile. The literature and the literary and artistic repertoires of this group, by that I mean the Hispanic refugees or exile community, are too numerous to summarize here. But who can forget the resilience with which Jose Maria Heredia turned nostalgia and adversities into the pedigree of his life, or the voluminous work of Garcia Lorca after his brief residence in New York City. In 2000, the New York Times, a New York Times article about the work and life of Garcia Lorca concluded that the poet went back to Spain a changed man, in quotation. Fourth, the evidence presented in this book leads even the casual reader to one unsettling conclusion. The cultural production in exile constitutes the pillar of our own national identity. Consider, for instance, the work of Faustino Sarmiento, or even more recently, Octavio Paz. What would they have said about who we are without confronting the other? The concluding picture that one draws from the 5 chapters that organize this book is a dynamic cosmopolitan community who embraces diversity and celebrates creativity and is in constant coexistence with others in exile. As Richard Sennett, a very prominent sociologist, would say, the trajectory of Hispanic culture in America amount to nothing more than a fine illustration of the uses of disorder. Luis Alberto aptly stipulates, las estadísticas aquí utilizadas de diversos años y décadas pasadas se actualizan con una progresión ilusionante. Nuestra rica historia y realidad se consolida positivamente. In sum, one can only hope that pundits and policymakers do not overlook the lessons this well-researched and encyclopedic book so fondly brings us. Immigrant communities bring life, cultural life, to the experiment that we call America. Thank you very much.
The beautiful part of our community is that you will learn many different accents. So this is the Argentinian accent, the one that I am going to use. And I will be bilingual. My presentation as the book is in Spanish, but I will try to translate. How many of you here speak only English? So, okay. So I'll try to do my best. Thank you so much, Enrique, for the presentation. And what I will do now is offer you a PowerPoint sharing some of these great discoveries that I had when I came here. I came here in 1967. The following year, I was on the leadership program for the United Nations, and I had to do my internship at the White House under the first year of President Nixon. And as I tell in the book, at that point in time, some of the fellow White House staffers, when they met me in the aisle, they will say, well, Louis, you have to really learn English and talk in English and so on. And I will tell them, well, listen, I am doing that with you, but you better learn Spanish. And a few of those guys who survived me, now they are in the mid-80s or so, when they see me, I said, Oh, Luis, you were so right. Okay. Anyways, how many of you do not understand English? Do I need to translate that or? No, English, so that I can translate it into Spanish. No? Everybody understood what I said with my accent and everything? Great. Okay. Then I will start my my PowerPoint presentation, and I said this is the obviously the cover of the book, which is out there for sale, and I'll be glad to sign it. And okay, let's go to the next. Now, you know, our history, Hispanic history in the U.S. is amazing. In the first people that came over here, Ponce de Leon, was with different expeditions in 1513. So that's about a century before the Pilgrims. And not only that, there are certain things that are unbelievable because there were expeditions, and not only expeditions, but actual settlements in different parts of the U.S. Like Ponce de Leon will go from Florida all the way up north. They went to Missouri, Mississippi. They went west to many different states. And for instance, I found out that the Jesuits placed some missions in Virginia. It is there, very, very small letters in that paragraph. By the way, these are paragraphs taken from my book of the history. So you have all kind of dates and so on. And this is what the book is all about. Statistics, dates, and funny stories that some of them I will share with you. The picture which is on the book is Gaspar de Villagra. Gaspar de Villagra wasn't Spanish, he was an American. He was born in Mexico, but he was a lawyer. In fact, he was the one who led the first, court lawsuit or claim. He wrote also, he was a poet as well, and in 1598, on the expedition with Juan Oñate in Nuevo Mexico, he wrote his book of poetry, and I will read for you a paragraph in English of someone referring to his book. He says, and this is F.W. Hodge. This what works about the poem. This is Historia de la Nuevo Mexico that was published in 1610. By the way, he studied law in Salamanca, even though he was born here in Mexico. He says, what works about the poem is the disclosure of competing claims in the epic structure of intent. An epic celebrates the exploits, intelligence, and courage of the protagonist, but to do so, it also requires honoring the antagonist. The Homeric Greek epic, for example, celebrates conquest, and yet it dramatizes the agony of warfare, making heroes of both the victor and the vanquished, and creates this equal measure in order to immortalize Greece, or, in the case of Villagra, Spain. Yet it seems to me that Villagra, in some strange and I think unintended way, immortalizes not Spain, but America. Okay, enough. I don't have too much time. I like to leave time for us to engage on a dialogue, un coloquio, discutir un poco, así que voy rápido. Okay. See, in our actual territory of the U.S., you see all of the states that were either Spanish or Mexican and so on, even after the independence. So you have there, for instance, Alabama, Spanish until 1783, Arizona until 1821, and Mexican until 1848, and so on and so forth. Quite a number of the states that actually formed the U.S., our U.S., were Spanish, Hispanic, I would say. So either Mexican or Spanish. By the way, as I said, all of these are paragraphs from the book. So, and I, even, you know, as I said, as a prophecy, and in 1775, the Congress, Continental Congress, following Thomas Jefferson's suggestions, they rejected the British pound, the sterling pound, and they adopted the Spanish dollar. In fact, the sign of dollar is from the imperial logo of arms with the logo plus ultra. And it's amazing. I mean, I play this game. I said, well, pull out the dollar from your pocket and see who signs it. Usually it will be a Hispanic name. Let me see. I would pull one just to make sure that I am correct. And if it is not, let's see. This is a $1. And who signs it? Rios. So it's one of those, whatever. Do I have it here? Yeah, Rosa Matao Rios. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now, another interesting fact is, you know who placed the actual foundational stone on the White House? And I would say, well, usually you need to ask one of the presidential candidates, and I won't name the name, because he happened to be a Hispanic immigrant. Pedro Casanave. He came from Navarra, Spain, and he worked like we all immigrants usually do and work hard. He was a real estate agent and became the 5th mayor of Georgetown, which was the oldest part before Washington was created. And he placed the foundational stone on the White House, or the keystone. I don't know how you say that in English, la piedra, the keystone, right? Keystone. On the White House, at that time it was called the President House, and he selected a really interesting date, the 12th of October of 1792. And that's the reason why we are called, our capital is called Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Okay, that's one. Like that, there are many, many anecdotes, both personal, and I will share some of those, as well as historical, that are not well known or not known at all. Okay, one of my discoveries was amazing, is the fact that our creator, Thomas Jefferson, not only he knew Spanish, but he obligated his daughters, as well as all the relatives, to learn Spanish. And see, this is Peter Carr. He sent him this letter in 1787. See, it's in Spanish and in English. You can read the English there. Español, préstale mucha atención y procura adquirir un conocimiento exacto del mismo. Nuestras relaciones venideras con España y la América hispánica harán que la adquisición de este idioma sea muy valiosa. La historia antigua de esa parte de América también se ha escrito en ese idioma. Te envío un diccionario. Siempre hacía eso. He always did that. Either send a grammar or a dictionary or a Quijote. See, this is probably too small, but here is the letter to Mary Jefferson Epes, which was the youngest one. He writes to her aunt, said, I have insisted on her reading 10 pages a day in her Spanish Don Quixote and getting a lesson in her Spanish grammar. And he was very insistent. O sea, Jefferson aparentemente insistía totalmente, porque en sus cartas, en el capítulo relacionado con esto en el libro, pues hay muchas citas. Insistía tremendamente en eso. Tal es así que la hija, Mary, wrote him back and said, Dad, I finished reading El Quijote. Now I am starting to read Lazarillo de Tormes, another classical novel in Spain and the Spanish world. Not only that, that was a novel that was forbidden by the Inquisition as well. Anyway, so, and not only that, for instance, I mentioned before his nephew, Peter Carr. Over there, he's sending a dictionary, Inglés Español de Baretti, and then also a grammar and other books in Spanish. And I like to emphasize the second part of that paragraph, which it says, cuando llegues a ser un hombre público, político, tendrás oportunidad de utilizarlo y la circunstancia de poseer tal idioma podría darte una situación de preferencia frente a otros candidatos. Hello? That's, you know, it's amazing. I don't know. Is he our founder, our creator, our... amazing. Okay. And I could keep on going, but you can read the book. Then, Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman, when he was young, he was in favor of the Mexican War in 1848. But then he changed totally his mind and his attitude. And he wrote this when they invited him to celebrate the anniversary of the foundation of Santa Fe. And look what visionary declarations he made there. I don't know whether I have it in English in the book. I think I may have. But let me see. Oh yeah, let me see. No, it's not translated into English here. But basically what it says there es el carácter hispano le va a proveer algunas de las partes más necesarias a esta compleja identidad americana. Ningún origen muestra una mirada retrospectiva más grandiosa en términos de religiosidad y lealtad, de patriotismo, valentía, decoro, gravedad y honor. The Hispanic character will provide one of the most important necessary elements to this complex American identity. No other origin shows such a retrospective vision, bigger in terms of religiosity and loyalty, patriotism, courage, and so on. So this is our poetic icon. So these are discoveries that I have really discovered myself when I came here. Okay. Then the book, the fifth chapter of the book deals with the literature, Hispanic literature. This is literature written in Spanish in the U.S., which starts in 1522. The first book published, written in this area by Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, was published in Spain in 1542. But it deals with and it was written through his mission in Nuevo Mexico in 1539. And then in the poetic gender, and this book, by the way, deals not only with the prose novels, also theater and essays and so on. The poetic gender is led by Bartolomé de Flores in 1571, and he published this book in Sevilla, and probably written in Florida. And the other person that wrote the famous poem Florida was Fray Gregorio de Escobedo, who wrote that poem between 1583, probably 89, even though it was published in Spain in the beginning of the 1600s. Amazing. This I cannot translate except for the first one. These poems were written in mid 1800s, so 1850, 1850s. Look at the type of topic, and in this book I point out to many topics that are so current. It's amazing. Here, for instance, the first one, it says, hermoso idioma español que te quieren prohibir, yo creo que no hay razón que tú dejes de existir. Beautiful Spanish language, they want to forbid you. I don't think there is any reason for you not to exist. You know, and here we have the English only and this and that. Now, the second one is interesting from the point of view of Spanglish. Obviously, for English-speaking people, probably this is not so important. But in Spanish, the mixture of the languages is such that, if you don't use the correct word, and I can tell a personal story. I translated and published Robert Pinsky's selected poems. He was the poet laureate. And he insisted in reading the poem in Spanish on some of the presentations. I said, no, listen, let me read it. Because if you don't put the right accent or pronounce the ñ, the word changed totally in the sense of the word. Year, for instance, in Spanish is año. If you don't pronounce the ñ, it's a totally different word. And I will not say it just because they are videotaping this. So it's interesting that poem, and if somebody is willing to translate that, because I don't know how to do it, says, conocía en California una paisana muy bella, de 18 primaveras, que educada en una americana escuela. Inglesaba algunas frases que olían a gringo a la legua. Con frecuencia se le oía llamar al cesto basqueta, cuenta las cuadras por bloques, a un cerco decirle fensa, al café llamarlo cofe, a los mercados marqueta, al bodegón grosería. Now, I won't translate the whole poem, but grocery, obviously in English, I'm going grocery shopping and so on. In Spanish, it means, what will be the best translation for grosería? Rudeness, ugly, everything totally different from grocery shopping. Okay. This is a first. We have the first Hispanic poet laureate in the U.S., Juan Felipe Herrera. By the way, all these pictures are in the book as well. And obviously, we have the first Supreme Court judge, Hispanic, so Sonia Sotomayor. And I bring this up because the book is full of these firsts and so on, first senator, congressman, this, whoever, just to document our history. And our future is really, really great. Basically, I just want to point out with Silvia Puente, the idea is not the Hispanic, the U.S. Here I am emphasizing that, but the idea is the we as part of the U.S. This is not like the language that we speak. Our Spanish is not of Spain or of Mexico. It's our Spanish, our U.S. Spanish language, and we are U.S. Hispanic. We are not Mexicans or whatever. In fact, I will tell you a story from my family album. My middle son, Javier, he's the genius type. And when he was 22, he got a PhD in biophysics from the University of Caltech. Anyways, when he was 5 years old, I went to the director of the primary school that was about 2 blocks from our house. I knew him because we both coach soccer for the kids. So I told him, listen, if Javier goes there to kindergarten, he will make life miserable for everyone else because he gets bored and starts doing all kinds of things. And he said, okay, Luis, don't worry about it. Just bring him over. He will take a test for half an hour. And if he passes it, he goes straight to first grade. I said, great. So I bring Javier, 5 minutes, the test is over. He passes. Okay. My oldest son had been going to that primary school for 5 years prior, never heard a word. Now, the second day that Javier was in school, Fred Cook, he calls me at work. I said, Luis, I have Javier here in my office. I said, oh, my goodness. And he was laughing. He said, he must have done something really bad for them to bring you to your office. And he was, yeah, that's on. And well, what did he do? He said, no, you better talk to him. I said, but give me a clue or something. So, no, that's fine. It's better for you to talk. And he was laughing. And I said, well, you know, Luis was there for 5 years. Never they took him to your office. And he said, I know, well, fine. I'll talk to him when I get back from work. So, 3 o'clock, I get back from work, I wait for Javier to come in, I open the door, I said, oh, hi Javier, how are you? Fine, Dad. How was your day in school? Oh, great. Oh, okay. I said, you know, Mr. Cook called me and told me that they had taken you to his office. Oh, yes, Dad. Well, what happened? No, this kid called me Mexican, and I told him Virginian. And Mexican, Virginian. And then what happened? No, then I hit him. Oh, my goodness. I said, and then he turns, and I still remember his face, and said, by the way, Dad, what is Mexican? Okay, so probably neither Chris nor him knew what Mexican was. But my son probably said, oh, you know, this is not water, this is agua. And then Chris told him Mexican. And he said, by the way, Dad, what is Mexican? So anyway, the idea is that Jefferson asked us to learn Spanish, to learn many languages. So the idea is that we are more and more multicultural, multilingual nation. And okay, this is the end, and this is a book that I have written with passion and pride, and I hope that it will be coming in English as well. So I hope that not only we, the Hispanic community, read it and learn from it, but also the English-speaking community, so that we all learn our history truly as it is, and not just the official version. And this is a poem that I have read and many times, which is whenever I go in Latin America and they announce me as a poet or writer from the US, they always say, oh, down with the Yankees or whatever. And I said, no, wait a minute. I said, you know, the US, we are part of America, and Hispanic America. And then I read then this poem, which is called Paisajes de Estados Unidos. Si cada ladrillo hablara, si cada puente hablara, si hablaran los parques, las plantas, las flores, si cada trozo de pavimento hablara, hablarían en español. Si las torres, los techos, los aires acondicionados hablaran, si hablaran las iglesias, los aeropuertos, las fábricas, si cada surco de este país hablara, hablarían en español. Si los sudores florecieran con un nombre, no se llamarían piedras, sino González, García, José, Rodríguez o Peña. Pero no pueden hablar, son manos, obras, cicatrices, que por ahora callan, o quizás ya no. Estados Unidos hispano. Thank you so much. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce la doctora Carmen Benito Bessels, which will lead the debate or the discussion on these topics. And Enrique, if you want to come on over as well. And I think that probably we'll do it in, oh no, we have one English speaking. Okay. So, great, thanks.
Thank you very much, Luis Alberto, for giving me the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for organizing this event. I think that this poem is probably the best way to start our conversation. And it's, when I first read the book, I was looking for a specific data, and I knew it was there. So I read it a little bit fast, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of information. The second time, when I was invited to lead this discussion, I was even more amazed. Because this, in my view, is a little vademecum. It's an encyclopedia that is disguised in the form of a very humble book. Like this poem, I think, is this, in this poem is the history, in my view, of the Hispanic population in the US. And I don't know if there is more room to add to what is already here. But if we have something, I'm sure that, well, Luis Alberto have mentioned that you have made several discoveries in during your writing, the writing of the book, and I wonder if there is still something else that you would like to add. I'm sure a second edition is at the door because you have more to say. And what else would you like to include in this book or to expand? Because obviously there is enough material here to do so.
Amazingly enough, I think that practically every day we find something new. I mean, a new name, a new person that has won an award, for instance, is of Hispanic descent. In fact, yesterday or something, I read so and so. This was in the sports side of the. And all of a sudden, I said, "Oh my goodness, this is like football, American football." And all of a sudden, this guy was considered to be the most valuable player, so to say. And his name was, for instance, it wasn't Escobar. I know that Escobar was he's a baseball player. But something like that. Every day you find more and more, you discover more and more contributions of the Hispanic community to our general culture and our general history and so on. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, but in addition to obviously the new data that is coming up every day, probably I'm sure that the audience may have questions about this presentation. If not, I could continue. But do you have questions for any of these either poems or topics that Luis Alberto Ambroggio has presented? Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Yava Noturno. I'm with the Interactivity Foundation. Thank you very much for the book and for your comments. I have two quick questions. One, what inspired you to write the book, and what was the need you felt you were answering? And second, when is the translation in English coming out?
I am looking for a translator. The first question was, what inspired me to do this? I was sent as a cultural envoy for the U.S. to give lectures in several countries, and those were the topics that I selected, such as Walt Whitman and the Hispanic element on our nationality, or Thomas Jefferson and the Spanish language. But basically, it's the fact that I was really totally at awe with this reality when I first came here. I came to the U.S. in '67 thinking, well, here I am, this is English only type of thing, so I better do it and so on. And all of a sudden I start discovering, the guy who comes around when I call Smith and whatever and somebody else to come over to do the lawn, and the guy that comes is Jose, and if I say hola instead of hello, he, oh my goodness, that's good. So this is one of the motive of my sharing these discoveries. And as far as the English version, I like it to come out as soon as possible. Hopefully in 3-4 months we should have it out. And I think it's basically, as I said before, the passion and the pride as a not as a Hispanic separately, but as part of this beautiful country of ours.
No, just think, if I may say, one of the things that strikes more in this book is not only the passion and the pride, but the intellectual pride and the acute remarks that we are constantly written throughout the book. We are part of the U.S. as well. Is it time that we rewrite the history books? Is it time that we teach our students, or we let the common citizen know about the Hispanic past, because this Hispanic past is part of their history. As Jefferson very well mentioned, we didn't start with the War of Independence. We started much prior. And even our literary roots, the way Luis Alberto Ambroggio presents is very original, because usually we think about other figures from either Latin America or Spain that have impacted North American literature, and comes to mind Mark Twain with Huckleberry Finn and the picaresque novel, or Night in the Court of King Arthur. That's Mark Twain. But what we find in this book is that this is a two-way street, and we find Whitman in Hispanic poetry. And so it's a mutually enriching history. And I think that's one of the things that is more fascinating, as well as the equanimity that one finds in this book, the precision of the words. There is not one perfect Spanish. There is not one Spanish. There is many variations. And I think that I would like to ask Luis Alberto or one question and then another for the audience. It's obvious that you not only use the language as a poet does with, as an art. I find that each word in this book is crafted. And I wonder, all of us have a mechanism of survival, being here and suffering the aggression of many foreign languages, or our own students who don't speak very well the Spanish language, and we have to make an effort to keep our Spanish more or less, under academic standards, or or improve our own language. And I wonder what Luis Alberto reads to keep his Spanish that beautifully preserved and so rich after all these years in the U.S.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Part of it, I think, obviously language is part of my identity. And as such, I love it. Like I love my culture, like I love my family, like I love... they say that when we go into exile, diaspora, however you wanted to call it, we tend to grasp something. And basically, I think that what we grasp is precisely our things that identify us. It's true that here I am talking in English, so bilingualism, and one of the chapters of the book deals with that, bilingualism and identity, because in reality, here in the US, this is part of our identity. It's being able to say hola and say hello. That's what makes me Hispanic American. That's what I tell when I go to schools here and I on workshops and so on. I am the first one to insist, listen, learn English like the best, but never forget your Spanish. This is something, and my kids know that. And basically, I study in social linguistics, so I am open to the idea of that languages communicate and the dialogue and so on and so forth. But also, I feel that I shouldn't say words in English and make them like Spanish, or vice versa, make English words Spanish. Like, I don't think that I should say troca. I rather say truck. And then if I need to say in Spanish, I say camioneta. Or, and so on. I can go on and on. I have poems, I have articles written to that effect. I think that's important because that's part of the respect of our different nationalities that are conjugated in our personality, so that we are one. Well, Walt Whitman usaba, he used many words in Spanish. Por ejemplo, libertad, camarado. Él decía camarado, no camarada. And so on. But he used them in Spanish. He won't say, for instance, libertadi or something like that. I am inventing that. So I think that's why I kept my language, and I wanted my kids to keep this language. And it's so helpful, and being bilingual and being good bilingual, in other words, good English and good Spanish. Another story of the family album. My daughter has a PhD in oh my goodness, I am becoming senile. It's a PhD in epidemiology, and she was invited by El Salvador. They were interested in the research that she was doing, and so they sent a letter from the Department of Public Health in El Salvador inviting her. Her boss was so impatient that went ahead and used Google to translate that invitation coming del Departamento de Salud Pública de El Salvador. Y entonces fue a Google. ¿Todos entienden español acá? ¿Sí? Bueno, fue a Google a buscar la traducción. Y entonces de repente viene y la llama a mi hija, dice, ven que quiero reunirme con respecto a ese proyecto. Y viene mi hija y lo nota él todo como enfurecido, así serio, qué sé yo, y entonces le dice él a ella en inglés, no, ¿qué es esto? Este es un chiste. ¿Por qué? Le dice ella. No, ¿qué es esto? Una invitación, la carta of the Department of Public God Bless You. What is this? Así se lo había traducido Google. El Departamento Public God Bless You. Así, el Departamento de Salud Pública. Como nosotros decimos cuando estornudamos salud, entonces aquí God Bless You. Así que...
Bueno, Luis Enrique, ¿quieres hacer algún comentario? Allá. Perdón.
Tengo un comentario y lo voy a hacer en español. Pasé todos los años, los 52 años que vivo en este país, enseñando español en la universidad, con el gobierno, etc. En estos momentos, habiendo sido profesora, en estos momentos hay algo que no me gusta. Por ejemplo, cuando uno va, hablando de ser bilingüe, estoy muy de acuerdo. Pero ¿por qué? Cuando voy a votar, hay un cartel que dice, vote aquí. ¿Por qué? Los españoles no hablan inglés, no saben dónde se vota. Y si es así, si no hablan inglés, ¿cómo van a votar? Cuando uno vota, vota por una persona que usted la conoce, que usted sabe qué va a hacer. Usted tiene que decidir entre una u otra persona. Si esa persona no habla inglés, ¿cómo puede votar? ¿Por qué necesitan poner un cartel que dice vote aquí? A mí me ofende, la verdad que me ofende.
¿Quieres?
Dígame,
Sí, a mí no me
¿es
ofende.
bilingüe la persona
Sí.
cuando es una cosa del país que va a votar por la administración en este país? No en Argentina, no, aquí. ¿Para qué necesita poner un cartel que dice vote aquí?
Sí. A mí...
Es ofensivo.
Claro, eso es personal, ¿no? En el sentido de que a mí no me ofende, sino que me enorgullece ver el español ahí. ¿Por qué? Porque dentro de nuestra comunidad, y digo, yo ayudo aquí, por ejemplo, al Centro de Alfabetización en Español, CENAES, nuestros inmigrantes a veces vienen sin tener mucha educación, incluso allá.
Usted no puede votar, señor.
Perdón. Aquí se vota y se habla porque hay gente dentro de nuestra comunidad, la mayoría de la gente es bilingüe, entonces posiblemente hablan. Hay periódicos en español que precisamente hablan de toda la política y que esta gente que lee puede leer. Entonces, y por el otro lado, digamos, yo soy miembro de la Academia Norteamericana de Lengua Española, tenemos un acuerdo con el gobierno para traducir documentos oficiales. O sea, el español ha sido ahora, digamos, reconocido como un idioma que debe ser traducido precisamente porque reconocen la importancia de esta minoría. Y seguro que los políticos son los primeros que dicen, voten aquí porque el voto hispano ha significado una gran diferencia.
Sí.
Cuando se va a votar aquí, no sé cómo es en todos los estados, pero muchas veces hay que seguir unas instrucciones técnicas de botón, cuál viene primero, mueva lo demás, y tal vez ahí es que también necesitan ayuda a las personas que no dominan también el inglés para poder seguir las instrucciones y que su voto sea registrado adecuadamente. Es parte del proceso. Creo que estoy de acuerdo con usted que hay suficiente información en español que se está promoviendo para los que no dominan la lengua en el inglés, periódicos, la prensa y los candidatos. Ellos están yendo a las comunidades en español y hablando en español.
Hablando en español.
Sí,
Así que creo
así
que lo veo así. Pero tengo una pregunta.
Sí.
En la primera ficha que puso, no sé si fue que no lo vi bien, donde usted menciona los territorios y estados que eran españoles y ahora son parte de Estados Unidos. No sé si incluyó a Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, hablo de Puerto Rico, pero es un caso especial, porque en este momento, o sea, ¿cómo te podría decir? La situación jurídica de Puerto Rico es diferente de un estado en este momento, o sea,
Pero es un territorio.
es un territorio. Por eso digo, tampoco hablo de Hawái o cosas así, o sea, hablo de los estados aquí dentro del estado. Por ejemplo, cuando hablo de la literatura puertorriqueña en el libro, hablo de la literatura continental, no de la isla de Puerto Rico. O sea, porque, por ejemplo, hay más puertorriqueños posiblemente en Nueva York que lo que hay en la isla, pero hablo de la literatura escrita en el territorio, en el continente de los Estados Unidos, no de Puerto Rico. ¿Por qué? Por la situación especial de Puerto Rico y que todavía está definida, pero no del todo, ¿no? Así que no, por eso no lo menciono.
No, bueno, o sea, realmente no sé. Sí,
I
Georgette.
think it's the genius of the United States to absorb not only Spanish but all the other languages, because you can also go in Vietnamese, in Cambodian, you name it. So it's the genius of this country to absorb so many wonderful cultures and languages.
Right, and if I may add one little thing, it's Spanish was the first language spoken in Virginia, much prior than English. Therefore, I'm really looking forward to the day when we have not only the vote aquí, but also the names of the streets or directions in both languages, the same way that it happens, let's say, in Catalonia or in Belgium, because the population knows both languages. That doesn't mean that one is superior to the other. It means that they are sufficient numbers that justify this bilingualism. And that, as I said, that doesn't mean that you have to forget one, as Luis Alberto had mentioned, and or give priority of one language over the other. Of course, there is one thing called common sense, and there is plenty of attention to that common sense in this book. Because among us, we also have our differences, the Spanish, about language, the nuances, and we are all very picky.
Lo que sí no me gustaría que dijese vote aquí con B larga. ¿Y qué pasa? Por ejemplo, en una vez en un restaurante estábamos hablando con unos amigos de la señora del dueño de ese restaurante. Y la chica, que hablaba hablaba español, no sé dónde era, pero hablaba español, de repente nos dice, sí, ya le voy a traer a la vaga. Y nosotros nos quedamos, ¡ay, Dios mío, qué falta de respeto! Porque estábamos hablando de la señora del dueño. Y no, ella se refería al bag. Iba a traer a la vaga. Pero estábamos discutiendo, pero vaga es con B corta.
There's one more question here, please.
Sí, primero agradecerle mucho por el libro, realmente yo creo que es un tópico fascinante, muy poco conocido, muy necesario de que realmente se conozca. En mi caso particular, nosotros tenemos 3 hijos, nosotros somos argentinos, nuestros 3 chicos crecieron itinerantes por mi trabajo y ellos son bilingües perfectos, pero hay que, digamos, bilingües en el sentido de biculturales, bilingües y biculturales, es decir, que saben adaptarse a las culturas, al modo de ser cultural de los dos, digamos, de las dos poblaciones, hispanoparlante y hispanoparlante. Pero tenemos un tema muy serio con nuestros nietos, porque ahí estamos, porque nuestros 3 hijos se casaron con 3 americanos, digamos, 2 americanos y una americana, porque tenemos 2 nenas y un varón. Y este libro me va a servir muy bien para apoyar la campaña que estamos haciendo para que nuestros nietos también sean, porque a veces no se aprecia. Digamos, yo creo que el tema del bilingüismo, como usted muy bien lo expresa, es muy necesario, inclusive lo decía Jefferson ya hace muchos años, y sin embargo no ha permeado. Hay mucha gente que todavía piensa que con el inglés solo las cosas están se van a llevar la pared por delante cuando quieran salir al mercado. Solamente este comentario, solamente agradecerle mucho su
el orgullo que debe sentir cuando lo dice aquí, ¿no? Cuando uno de sus nietos lo llama abuelo, ¿no?
Sí.
Creo que es realmente una obligación nuestra también, ¿no?
Well, thank
Pero
you
que-
very much.
Bueno,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great success.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.